I'm Rasс Taiera. I'm the Calabat chef for the United States, based in Chicago, Illinois. The first step to create the cognac truffle recipe is to combine all of the liquid ingredients, which is the heavy cream, the glucose syrup, and the butter. We're going to put that into a saucepan and we're going to heat that to 75 degrees Celsius. The temperature will be just enough to melt the chocolate that's in the recipe so that the final temperature of the ganache is below 35 degrees Celsius, which is very important for the proper crystallization of the cocoa butter inside the truffle. So we heat the mixture to 75 degrees Celsius, we pour it over the chocolate, and we're going to wait for a moment just to allow the heat from the liquids to start to melt the chocolate. After we wait for a moment, we're going to blend it with an immersion blender. We add the cognac later to preserve the flavor and also to prevent the alcohol from evaporating. We blend one more time just to ensure that the alcohol has been well incorporated and that the ganache is perfectly smooth. Lastly, we'll ensure that the temperature of the ganache is below 35 degrees Celsius before we pour it out into a tray. We allow it to set at room temperature until it crystallizes to a piping texture. After sufficient crystallization, we'll transfer the ganache to a piping bag and we'll pipe it into a truffle shape onto parchment paper on a tray. We'll allow those truffles to set at room temperature overnight to fully crystallize so that tomorrow we can roll them into a truffle shape. The Freak is the first cooktop that I've ever used that I felt safe to melt chocolate directly in the pan without using a bain-marie. So to do that, we're going to first melt the chocolate to 50 degrees Celsius in a saucepan. And then the second step is to turn down the temperature to 32 degrees Celsius. Next, we'll add in about 20% of solid tempered chocolate to this and allow the temperature to slowly drop to 32 degrees Celsius while those last lumps melt. Then, once the chocolate is properly tempered, we'll use that chocolate to roll the truffles. We'll roll the truffles twice. We'll put 2 coats of chocolate onto the truffles so that if the first coat has any cracks, the second coat will ensure that those cracks are filled in. During the coating of the truffles, we use the probe control from the Freak in order to maintain an accurate temperature of the chocolate. When we coat the truffles the second time, we'll immediately place the truffles into cocoa powder and then roll them in the cocoa powder so that they're evenly coated. After a few minutes inside the cocoa powder, after the chocolate has set, we'll pick the truffles up and we'll sift them to remove any excess cocoa powder, at which time those truffles are then ready for consumption or packaging.